apartment buildings, battery as a service, swapping, etc. There's also the question around, do you actually incentivize the supply side or do you incentivize the demand side? So Chetan, to you, how do you rationalize across all those different opportunities, or what role should the government play? And maybe a second question to that, is the Indian government doing enough versus what you see around the globe to actually fuel that transformation that's needed?
Thanks so much, Thomas. So I think, in India, we've got the support of the policy should actually do for all solutions because they're going to coexist. At a product level, it could be two-wheelers, three-wheelers, four-wheelers, or buses. It could be slow charge, fast charge, or battery swapping. It's personal and shared, where the emphasis of infrastructure would be different. In shared, more swapping makes sense. In personal, home charging or work charging makes sense here. And in fact, even the same product may have different infrastructure. If I'm a school bus, I have 8 hours to charge. If I am having an hour or two in the day, I may use opportunity charging. And if I'm running 24/7, I may want swapping. So it should be agnostic to the type of technology used. The other side is there are new models coming in, right? There's mobility as a service, battery as a service, battery leasing. It's the same product being positioned differently. And the challenge we today have is that the policies are not looking at all the business models and they're not looking at all the solutions. So for example, if the same product you were to have a battery leasing or you have a battery swapping, then the GST on the battery would be 18% compared to a vehicle at 5% when sold together, right? So there's an anomaly on taxation. Similarly, the services for charging a battery would be at 18% versus say 5%. So there's taxation challenge. The subsidies today are based on the battery size, but if you suddenly separate the battery out, there's non-clarity around how the subsidies come. So here is a customer walking into a showroom, buying a vehicle that's actually lower cost for the batteries, but doesn't get the government subsidy. Now, earlier this year, the finance minister mentioned that the battery swapping policy would come out, and Niti Aayog is working on it, so I'm hoping this anomaly gets fixed. The other piece is on infrastructure. You have slow charging, you have fast charging, you have at home and apartments, you have battery swapping. How do you rationalize this into one piece across platforms? That again doesn't exist in the country. But it could be very simply rationalized by saying there's a certain concession per kilowatt of energy dispensed. That could be AC or DC or through battery swapping. And that enables multiple infrastructure solutions to be there. So I think if these two key areas of rationalizing certain things to enable different models to come can be huge. The other piece is several states have offering local benefits. Delhi is taking the forefront on that. These policies are not uniform from state to state. So therefore, states that offer such policies, you're seeing electrification much higher. While Karnataka started the EV policy when the first one in the country, it's a position that it could take right now to also see how some of these demand incentives could come to customers to accelerate adoption of electric mobility.
Thank you very much. We heard, and you shared that there are many different technologies, operating models, etc. in the market. Now, scaling something that's very complex is probably a challenge. And some argue that interoperability or common tech standards will actually accelerate. However, obviously, then if you do that, there's a risk of limiting innovation, risk of making the strongest technology win in the future. Sachin, what's your ideal path for India in that respect?
Thank you, Thomas. Well, I think Mani covered very critical points when he spoke about the infra and how we have to do it. In India, I'm convinced that interoperability or the inter-usage and the common technology standards are must. These are the need of the hour. See, we are doing a lot of innovation on developing new products. Don't we think we should do a lot of innovation on execution piece of it? I'll just give you one example. We do public transport buses, so does Tata. In one of the cities, there is a depot. I have my chargers. Now, after some time, Tata buses came. Now, they'll have to put their own chargers. I tell you, it is at least 10% of the total project cost. Then it takes time. Today, if I have to supply a bus, it will take me 3 months to make a bus. But many places, developing infra takes 4 to 5 months. Now, where is the land in India? So there is so much of wastage happening there. I think if there is a policy, as Chetan said, we can bring down the cost, we can speed up the delivery, we can, a business model can generate much faster of charging infra from this. Because then the utility of a particular charging station will be much more during the day, and people will be encouraged to put those kind of infrastructure at whatever places they have. We should categorize into buckets, as Chetan said. 2 and 3 wheelers, slow chargers. We should encourage to have policy where people go on their own and put in their houses or their common places. Buses, I said, common technology is must. It will bring down the development cost and it will speed up the delivery, which we are struggling today. Innovation piece, we can leave it to cars which you people make in Germany. I think there is a lot of money lying there and people can afford that innovation. And once something gets developed, once something is proven, it can always percolate to these business models and the economies of scale will come in place and bring down the cost for passenger vehicle users also.
Thomas, Sachin brought a very important point. He said it takes 3 months to get buses and 5 months to get infra. And I think it's a very important point because, governments generally put in roads and then people put in the cars, right? The investments happen with different things. Electricity infrastructure to a point of the station today, if that can be done through public-private partnership at speed, then people are willing to put investment in charging infrastructure, right? But really what's important is laying the highway and the policies to allow that, because if that's going to grow at scale, that's a bigger challenge, because in buses you need, sometimes a megawatt at a depot or plus, and in many other places for swapping stations you're needing 30, 50 kilowatts, or even for fast charging stations. So I think that's a role that probably, governments have to play stronger. Not invest as much in the infra, but get power to a point where where industry will invest, but make the policies that make it easy to get power at a point.
I think that's a clear call for action. It's a clear call for action for the industry to actually come together and work on standards versus working on competing standards, and a clear call also for the policymakers to actually provide a fertile environment to get those things up and running. Let's move to Karnataka for a moment. Karnataka has decided, or is mulling over deciding, to make this a hub for e-mobility and EVs in the future. I think there are many benefits to that. It will help organize the supply chain. It will help bring up the infrastructure. The state has been very vocal on 100% electrification by 2030 on cab aggregators, rickshaws, corporate fleets, buses, etc. It's a huge opportunity actually for the industry. Ashim, to you, what is required to make Karnataka a leading state, and is that viable to do that in a state versus sort of do it in other states in India?
Thanks, Thomas. I think it's a very, very relevant question and most important and appropriate question today when we are doing the Invest Karnataka Global Summit. So before I respond to the questions, I just get back to the Norwegian model, which we all remember. This city has 1.5 lakh EVs, where the population is only 5.2 million. It's true that it initially came in the form of a subsidy, but then finally it becomes infrastructure and the chargers, and slowly it will get into the market forces, and it can also functions when the subsidies are getting imbued in the systems. It has been discussed. It's a little long haul. We need, Sachin said that we need 3 months to produce a bus, and again another 6 months maybe to put the chargers. The infrastructure is very important point. The EV sector is a combination of various sectors such as IT, electronics, semiconductors, battery manufacturing, and vehicle manufacturing. Karnataka steps towards EV manufacturing hub. The EV hub was announced when the Karnataka government unveiled the Beyond Bangalore project, and a slew of incentives. The Karnataka state government will set up 5 centers of excellence, which has been declared. This is working on an eco-friendly hydrogen fuel also. So such an ecosystem is required to give agility and to bridge the limits and potential. Electric vehicles can be considered similar to mobile phones, moving on wheels. Since a lot of data is generated, there needs this strong IT team's involvement in analyzing and getting insight from the data. Karnataka considered to be the IT hub of India and will give an edge compared to these states. One of the key factors driving the Indian electric vehicles market growth is attractive incentives being offered by the Indian government on the production and purchase of electric vehicles, FAME 1 and FAME 2, National Mission on Transformative Mobility and Storage, and many other incentives like PLI, road tax exemption, registration fee exemption, income tax benefit, GST rate reduction, scrapping incentives on old petrol and diesel vehicles, other interest-free loans, top-up of subsidies. Many things have happened. And Karnataka came first with a full-fledged EV policy. I think definitely being an IT hub and being a very, very well-sensitive state where you can say pollution, etc., to be controlled in a very big way, and the government steps are also very positive, and it have a very huge IT strengths, and with the different kinds of multifacets EV transformation, Karnataka is always a leap forward in the EV journey. That's what is my personal opinion.
Excellent. So it's good we meet here and not in a different state. Thank you very much. Let's move from the strategic imperatives and what governments and policymakers should do to what is actually important for consumers and stakeholders. And I would like to start with a somewhat high-level question, but the big challenge that the auto industry is facing at the moment is that the profits are still made sort of with the traditional way of producing two-wheelers, three-wheelers and cars, combustion engines, while at the same time it's very, very important that the players boldly invest into the future. Chetan, to you, how do you best manage this strategic challenge or strategic opportunity?
Well, once you see the market, everyone jumps on it, right? So just to give a perspective, last month in India, we sold 75,000 two-wheelers. It's almost a run rate of 1 million vehicles a year, right? That's 5-6x from last year. 51% of all three-wheelers sold in India are electric, right? Include the e-rickshaw. So there are some segments where you're seeing large growth. As a result of that, you're seeing in those segments a lot of investments. You're seeing a lot of companies come up, and success breeds success. I think the key is, of course, is continuous investments in R&D. It needs to be much more front-ended here. And when people are seeing the market, it starts to say that this gestation period can come through. There are also opportunities for us as an early stage to leverage areas where we can reduce our costs as the volumes are lower. So there can be a lot more use of common hardware on controllers or electronics, but customized software. This could enable India to have customized chips, standard hardware platforms. But as Asim also mentioned, Bangalore is the heart of software development, right, globally. And that software piece can give differentiation here. And we can have the economies of scale, right? The second thing is we have the new ACI policy coming in around cells and packs. If there are standardized solutions coming out that the entire industry can use and come together, they can integrate them into different form factors for their applications. But again, we could have common building blocks that could help the industry going through the low volume side. I think the third example we could take is when I think of what happened to the telephone industry. You know, in the 15 years ago, you had companies who were vertically integrated, who did everything. If you look at companies today, screen comes from A, battery comes from B, a certain chip comes from C, camera from D, and you put your proprietary software and you give the customer-facing brand and image. There are opportunities in smaller form factors, two-wheelers and three-wheelers, to have distributed manufacturing and a customization process that could reduce time to market and use common platforms. And in our experience of doing battery swapping, what we have found is we have reduced the investment for an OEM by 70% because the standard batteries come across, and we reduced that time to market by 70%. So newer models of partnership will also play a role as we scale up. I think one thing that would be helpful, especially from a supply chain point of view, we see a lot of policies from the government at the ACC, at the large company point, but a heart of most industries are the SMEs and the MSMEs. And there isn't a very strong framework for these companies to invest in technology and R&D related to this. I think that's where some more work can come on policies to give a push to the supplier ecosystem to really enable this in its infant stages.
Thank you. Let's quickly move to the consumer side. I mean, there are two big concerns that we hear. One is range anxiety, the other one is safety concerns. Asim, what can companies do to actually address those concerns?
Yes, safety is most of the important points, and we have been running, as I said, these industries are very much evolving, and we have an experience of running 715 buses across the country, and a huge number of buses will be forthcoming, including the same in the Bangalore city. So we are quite concerned. Recent events have actually highlighted the need for safety to be built in EV technology. Now, it depends on how do you address the safety. Definitely, the battery technology, which is the Gen 4 battery, the lithium ion which we are taking, and then you're going to lithium phosphate, which is the Gen 5 battery, that will basically improve the position in a very big way. And in currently concluded CESL tenders, which has happened, that has emphasized on the use of those batteries. We also need to remember that our country has unique requirements of ambient conditions, heat, rainfall, water logging, road conditions, use and abuse propensity, and economic aspects of the technology. So first and foremost, we must need to make a careful choice of technology which meets these conditions rather than trying to transplant products developed for any other markets. This becomes most critical, and the OEMs are concerned about it, and it's also heartening to note that the government is also making significant safety rules which are made welcome by the OEMs. The interesting part of the EV technology is because it breaks down traditional barriers of automaking. It appears easy to implement by anyone and everyone. However, implementing technology is not a demonstration project. It has to be done very carefully, which needs decades of automaking experience to be brought to effect. Otherwise, there is a risk of few players tarnishing the technology and would be unfortunate. On safety, we are already taking efforts to develop safety measures through software as well as hardware. We will also have additional safety compliance we welcome declared by the government as prescribed, which will further enhance the safety performance. It is anyway topmost priority of India, topmost priority of the OEMs and operators, and topmost priorities of everyone in the country.
Yeah, thank you. I think if you look beyond India, both those concerns were there. I mean, range anxiety and safety. I think the industry has actually demonstrated over time that they can be managed. Another concern that many people actually voice is, can I charge? And That's the question around infrastructure, which we earlier had, and the solutions are very different. If you go to Holland and you go to Amsterdam, it's a lot of roadside charging because people live in apartments and you can't install in residencies. If you go to California, it's a lot of workplace charging because everybody drives to work with their cars. Sachin, the question for you, I mean, what's the solution for India and how will that be different for metros and tier 2 and 3 cities?
Yeah, so Thomas, once again, a very interesting question. And first of all, I don't think one solution will fit good for India. It's too big a country. If you go to every city or a state, we have our own problems, and our own solutions. I think it's better we categorize into city-wise or, say, let's talk about metros. We have quality power. We have vehicles. We have people who are ready to invest. We have people who are ready to buy. But where is the place to put the charging infra? So I think here it's very important to have some sort of policy wherein the public space, wherever possible, the private space or private people are encouraged to give their place for putting up charging infra, and they are incentivized so that more charging points can come. I was just discussing with someone before the conference started. She was saying that I want to drive, but I'm scared. If I go out of town, where's the charging infra? So we have to bring public, private, individual owners. There are huge industrial hubs out on the outskirts of town. People move from industrial hubs to town and back. So if we can have some policies of putting, charging infra, encourage people, I think metro problem can be solved. Coming to tier 2 and tier 3 cities, it's in between. Somewhere there is a quality power available, somewhere it's not available. Land is less of an issue there. It's availability of quality power which is an issue. So we have to tackle that tier 2 and tier 3 cities very differently. But I'm very excited about the rural piece. In rural world, quality power is not there, but land is available. And let me tell you, Thomas, that people in rural India are more ready to change faster than we, the urban people. I'll just give you one example. Few years back, if we all must have, seen that in our, if we are from tier 2 or tier 3 cities, during the, sowing season, there used to be no power in the towns. Why? Because they need to give power to the farmers for them to run their pump sets to pump water. But neither the town people were happy nor farmers were happy because they were also not getting enough power. They were using diesel. So diesel consumption was going up. Their cost of production was going up. Pollution was going up. Government came with a policy of having solar pumps. Today, in many states, 80% of the pumps are run on solar in India. And there's a huge waiting list of the farmers to avail that subsidy to put that solar pump. It's just 6x6 or 9x9 space they need, which can easily be made available. It's 3 to 5 kilowatt kind of, solar infra, which is good enough for two-wheeler or three-wheeler to charge. So it's not always, we should attack metros and try to reduce the pressure there. If you take away rural India, which is 60-70% of India, and reduce that pressure of, on the grid, on the electricity side, imagine the kind of change it can bring and, how it will transform the lives of people. And it's free. The solar energy is free for them. They have land. All you need is to give them or incentivize them a bit and they will do on their own. So I think if we have to attack it on the three, modes, but the policy for this, especially for urban and semi-urban places, is very, very important. How do we use the common technology? How we use the space very efficiently? Because these two are the biggest problem. If we solve this, timelines will come down, cost will come down, people will openly go and buy more EV products, and transformation will happen much faster than what we are seeing today.
Thank you. Very, very convincing. I heard a lot about two-wheelers and three-wheelers. I heard about buses, etc. What's happening on the passenger car side? If you look at India, if you look at the Indian industry, will the Indian players dominate the Indian EV market in 10 years, or will the Teslas and the Chinese do that in India? Chetan, what's your view?
Well, of course. I think that you're already seeing, that the leading sales in electric cars are from Indian companies, right? And they're taking a forward step on that, and that's already establishing. And the reason is we're building for the market. And I think a lot of global players are building products for those markets. So those high-end products of Tesla or others may be 5% of market size here, but 80% of India is going to be the under 15 lakh category that is looking at getting into mobility. That probably needs us to think very, very differently of how we do our products and our technologies. So I think India actually has an advantage that if it does these solutions that cater to mass mobility, we have an opportunity to be a great export house from India to other developing countries and developed countries, because we can bring in the cost economies. If you think what India did for small cars, today we're the world leader, right? We took a market segment. We look at scooters and look at motorcycles today. We are the world leader. So there's an opportunity of taking a certain segment of cars, right, which are the ones that are at the smaller level, and probably create again a market leadership in that, not just in India but globally.
Thank you. Gives me more confidence than I had when sort of looking at other countries in the world. I think you have a very strong role to play. Now let's close with looking a bit ahead and a vision for the future. Sachin, how do you see the ecosystem 10 years from now, and what would be a really bold aspiration for India to aim already for today?
So I will talk more about the segment in which I am. That's the public transport. I think, as Chetan mentioned, it's going to be huge. Along with two-wheelers and three-wheelers, bus segment will definitely catch up much faster than any other segment in India. And government is convinced, we are convinced, if the public is convinced that that is the way to go. And EV, especially for intracity and intercity, which are not very far away, EV bus will take off, and we are already seeing that. Just to tell you, not only government, even private players are now buying. We have received certain orders from corporates who want to run their employee transport buses for EV, and they do not have a space problem. They do not have a customer problem, because it's all fixed. So people are adapting. It's a matter of time. We just have to bring down the cost. We just have to bring down the delivery times, and people will jump onto it. So I'm pretty convinced about the segment in which I am.
Very cool, very cool. Just imagine 10 years from now, we sit in the same panel here on stage again. We talk about the future of mobility. Chetan, what will we be talking about? Talk about the future of mobility. Chetan, what will we be talking about?
Well, I think we would have achieved the electric, would have achieved the autonomous, the connected, would have achieved the shared, and we would have achieved powered by renewable energy. I think the one we'll be talking about would be probably autonomous at that point.
Very cool, very cool. And I think to you, what's your single big wish to actually accelerate EV adoption in India?
To respond to this question, I would like to quote the legendary personality, Mr. J.R.D. Tata. He said, more than ever before, we must be ready to think every problem afresh, to change and innovate. I think this is the path for success for India. What people thought of in EVs has actually moved much bigger than this, and it will be the largest one. Government is taking very proactive measures, and also I think the OEMs have also very sincerely addressing to it, and the power of innovation will bring the change. The magnitude of change, you just cannot foresee. The magnitude of change will be will move like my personal feeling is a geometric progression rather than an arithmetic progression. And that will be the future of urban mobility for India. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me summarize. You will be the third largest automotive country in the world in just a few years. And I think we heard multiple reasons for the importance of this transition to electric vehicles or green mobility to happen. I think getting it right requires some ingredients. The first one we've talked about is we need a favorable political environment with the right incentives, the right focus on the topics that are helping the industry, but also the consumers to actually adopt. The second thing is, and I think that's different to the past, and we heard it a few times as well, in the past it was producing cars and putting roads in place. For this to happen, we need a holistic view on an ecosystem that's much more complex than it has been in the past. It's infrastructure, it's battery availability, it's regulation to be in place, it's the readiness of suppliers and automotive manufacturers, and actually all at the same time. I think this is something to be watched, because if one ingredient doesn't work, the whole system will actually work. And then last but not least, I think it's important to have a vibrant industry that takes up the opportunities with an ambition to actually win not only domestically, but also win against international competition. And I think it's good to focus in India, but I would actually encourage India to be much bolder and to play a much stronger role in the world. And if I would formulate my ambition for 2035, I would like to see India be a country with one of the highest EV adoptions around the world. But even more importantly, I would want to see India be a dominant, leading EV player at the world level. And given the geopolitical challenges that we see, I think you have a very important role to play in the world. With that, I would actually like to thank you for a fantastic discussion. I would like to thank the Karnataka government for inviting me to moderate that, and I would like to thank you all for joining our session. I hope you found it equally exciting. Thank you very much.
Kindly be seated, please. Please, sir. Please, few more minutes. So please be seated. We conclude on such a promising note. 10 years from now, we all sit and discuss about India's achievements and hoisting the flag of success in the EV sector. May we have a big round of applause for that. Very, very optimistic and promising impressions and thoughts shared. Thank you so much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have with us Commissioner, Industry and Commerce Department, Government of Karnataka, to hand over a token of gratitude to all our revered speakers here. Srimati Gunjan Krishna on the dais to give away the mementos. Chief Resource Officer at Switch India, Shri Sachin Nijavan. Thank you so much, sir. Co-founder and Chairman of Sun Mobility, Shri Chetan Myani. Thanks once again, sir. CEO and Managing Director for TML Smart City Mobility Solutions, Shri Asim Kumar Mukhyopadhyay. Dhanyavad, sir. And of course, our moderator, Managing Director and the Senior Partner at BCG, Mr. Thomas Donner. Loads of thanks to each one of you. And that was all about driving India into the future and revolution in India's mobility. Well, ladies and gentlemen, please make a note of this. At 1:30 p.m. in Audi 2, we will see a dynamic Indo-French investor interaction. Exactly at 1:30 p.m., Auditorium 2. And this will be on various opportunities for growth and challenges across sectors, along with SME investment experience. And that will be shared by very, very eminent dignitaries. Also, we invite all of you to join us for lunch, which is arranged at the delegate area. And we would once again want to remind you that please do visit the annex outside plenary hall at 2 p.m., where we will see a compelling interactive drum jam session facilitated by Roberto Narayan and Vasundhara Das. 2 p.m., annex outside plenary hall, drum jam, Roberto Narayan and Vasundhara Das. And also at 2:30, we once again reassemble here for the next session, which will be on India's self-reliance on aerospace and defense. And 3:30 p.m., we will have a compelling discussion on reinventing the energy ecosystem. This is all going to happen right here at this Auditorium 3. And of course, evening, we have an enriching experience with Jugalbandi, exactly at 6:30 p.m. This is an Ekshagana and at 7:30 p.m. we have an Ekshagana performance. So please be with us. Together, we make it happen for Invest Karnataka 2022. Thank you. Dhanyavada.